Shalom, this is Yair, Davidiy speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent Brit-Am. Brit-Am finds the lost 10 tribes amongst Western nations. That is where the lost 10 tribes are. We research it, we have proven it. We use biblical sources, we use rabbinical sources. We look at it from a Jewish perspective of the Bible, from the perspective of the Jewish religion, of the simple truth, as it is reflected the literal sources, and we also examine it according to history, according to linguistics, according to mythology, according to archaeology, DNA, current affairs, and everything which is somehow pertinent to the subject. We have chosen this subject, we believe in it, and we prove that the lost 10 tribes are amongst Western nations. What the conclusions should be from this, what conclusions the individuals may draw from this, that is another question that is up to them, or that is something for later discussions. We at the moment believe that the most important thing that can be done at the present, the most important task that we have at present, is to prove it, to show this proof, to bring this proof, to convince people about it, and to have them internalize this and know about it. And so one of the aspects of this subject is the fact that the lost 10 tribes, or people belonging to the lost 10 tribes, somehow or other, historically they have helped the Jewish people more than any others, and they continue to do so, even though there are numerous exceptions. We do not deny the exceptions. We do not deny historical truth. What happened, we own up to it, we examine it, and we present it. We do not try and cover the truth or disguise the truth or twist the truth to be other than it was. We recognize the fact that amongst the nations in question, there are people who hate the Jews, there are people who despise the Jews, there are people who are anti-Semitic, who are against the Jews, who have done things against the Jews, who are prejudiced against the Jews. They always have been and they always will be. And we're not saying that everyone in the nations in question is descended from Israelites. We're saying that a portion of them are, and some of these descendants of Israelites have given expression to their Israelite ancestry and have helped the Jewish people, and even today do continue to help the Jewish people in the state of Israel, despite the fact that there being numerous exceptions amongst them and that things could change for the worse, as in historical occasions they have done in the past. We are talking about taking things from an overall point of view and examine them as we see them. We also do not deny that the Jews themselves are not necessarily perfect. There are a lot of bad people amongst the Jewish people, as there are bad people amongst every group. And we do not deny this. We say that sometimes this is exaggerated. We acknowledge that it exists, and we own up to it. But nevertheless, we cannot dwell on this subject too much because the Jews are vulnerable. We also have to take everything into consideration. The Jews are vulnerable. The Jews are small. The Jews have been attacked, and you do not dwell on the faults of people who cannot afford to have their faults examined too closely, since they are doing the best they can and are doing quite well. Under the historical circumstances, the Jews, despite everything, have carried themselves through, and a good number of the Jewish people do keep the Jewish faith, and they try to do so, and they succeed in doing so, and they learn Torah. And even those who do not do this, there are historical explanations as to why they do not do it, and so everything has to be taken in its right context, in its context and consideration of the surrounding situation. And one of the matters which which are pertinent to a study of the lost 10 tribes and the state of Israel and the Jewish people is the help that the USA extends to the Jewish state of Israel, to the Jewish people in Israel. Now, we're not saying that all of the lost 10 tribes are in America, because they're not. A lot of the lost 10 tribes are amongst West European nations, and that is where they were. And from there came the founding pioneers who helped found the USA and determine much of its character. And in these nations, we often find people who are anti-Semitic or people who are critical of Israel, who back the Arabs against Israel. We don't the nations which are notorious for this. Ireland is often against the state of Israel. And France sometimes is. The other nations sometimes are and sometimes they are not. In the past, sometimes they were and sometimes they are not. And the present, the negative attitudes towards the state of Israel seem to have gotten control of a good portion of these other nations. So, nevertheless, the USA today seems to represent the Australian tribes on the whole, to be the most representative of them, and amongst the population of the USA are people who are most inclined towards an Israelite type consciousness, and this was actually predicted because we find those peoples who helped found the USA, helped determine the character of the USA, and are still very important in this matter in helping the USA find its way through history. A good proportion of them descend from the tribe of Joseph, especially from the Manasseh, the section of Manasseh, and it was predicted in Midrashim and derived based on biblical passages that Manasseh would be prominent in this regard in the return of the lost ten tribes. So this fits in with what we know, this fits in with the sources, and we shall return to this. Meanwhile, let's just see what the facts are. Let's just see what the facts and figures are of the situation. Different opinions concerning the ins and outs of it, and we'll discuss it all. We'll go through it all piece by piece. This is the first part in a 3-part series, so this is what we'll do. Now we have a few facts and figures, a few of the itty-gritty, one could say, what goes to make up the whole picture. This is what we have. In a sense, the state of Israel is the alter ego, another aspect of the USA. Israel is what the USA is all about in some sense. They are two parts of the one body, to a degree. The USA gives 3,000 million a year to Israel. It also helps other nations. The USA supports the state of Israel. Without the support of America, Israel will be in deep trouble, both economically, politically, and internationally, on the diplomatic stage and in other ways. And the USA benefits from its support for the state of Israel. That is also an important factor. The USA benefits very greatly from its support for the state of Israel. That is not necessarily why the primary cause or the primary motivation for its help to Israel. The other factors, but it is something, it exists, it is worth knowing about and acknowledging and taking this into consideration. Wikipedia tells us that since 1985 the United States has provided nearly $3 billion in grants annually to Israel. Israel receives more than any other country from 1976 to 2004. Israel has received more citizens from the USA since World War II than any other country. 74% of the funds that the Israel receives from the USA must be spent within the USA. So this money also goes to help the American economy and to help encourage American entrepreneurship and American industry and the American economy in general, and the backflow to the US economy from all of this is quite helpful to the USA. There be no mistake about it. Israel is strategically important to the USA. Senator Helms is quoted as saying that Israel is one aircraft carrier in the Eastern Mediterranean. It is as valuable to the USA because of its situation. President Trump has helped the USA. Recently, President Trump has helped Israel as well as helping USA. President Trump has been quite affirmative in his support for the USA. He appointed Nikki Haley in the UN, and she helped correct or rectify the bad scene that was happening in the UN where most votes in the UN were in condemnation of Israel. It was as if all the nations of the earth who had representatives in the UN have never had anything more serious on their agenda than to condemn the state of Israel on matters that she did not deserve to be condemned for. And Mickey Haley, the appointee of President Trump, helped correct that, and helped to correct that negative impression. And President Trump was therefore responsible for helping us in that way. President Trump was also instrumental in moving the US Embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, as recognizing the Golan Heights as part of Israel, as recognizing the vitality of the settlement to Israel and their legitimacy, and helping Israel in numerous other ways. I got a poll in 2013, found that 64% of Americans support Israel very much, and only a minority against them. And even that minority are not really mainly Hispanics and Afro-Americans that are okay, but they do not represent the determinative element within US society, or they represent it to a much lesser degree. So the portion of the American population which is primarily descended from Israel, according to our studies, they are the ones who are supportive of the state of Israel. Israel is more popular among older Americans, among Republicans, among conservatives, and among evangelicals, among people who are biblically conscious and connected with their traditions. Recently on the Quora forum, there were 2 questions that received hundreds of answers. Both questions are similar, and from these answers we derived the following information or expressions of opinion that we will discuss or briefly go through a few of them, just to get an overall idea of the different points of view on this matter. Questions. The first one was, why does the USA support Israel? What benefit does the USA get out of this alliance? The second question, which is similar, the second question was what is the main reason for the US support of Israel? So we had different answers, and these answers also show us the varieties of opinion and approach to the subject, and also give us information and insights that are worth considering. We should note that the founding fathers of the USA were biblically conscious. They came from nations who were descended from Israelites, so it came from nations who were descended from Israelites who had been settled by the Lost Ten Tribes, in whom the Lost Ten Tribes were dominant, and they had biblical values, as we said, or they had values that may be traced back to the Bible or derived from the Bible, and in a sense, by the USA helping Israel, this is getting back to its roots, it's getting back to its foundational principles. It is getting back for the reason its forefathers founded it, wanted it to exist. It is doing what it had to do. It is being true to itself. The USA supports Israel for many reasons, amongst others. The USA and Israel have mutual values, similar cultures. Israel is a democracy, the USA is a democracy. They have liberal traditions and believe in similar principles. And so they find much in common between each other, and the USA identifies with Israel to that degree, as the people of Israel identify with the USA. Israel is a genuine friend of the USA. Apart from that, the USA also supports numerous other countries and has base bases in other countries, and not all of them are as valuable to her as Israel is. Not all of them give back to the USA as much as Israel does. So this too needs to be taken into consideration. This is part of the overall picture, part of the perspective that we need to see. The USA has bases and gives support to Germany and to Japan, to Taiwan, to numerous places, because it is strategically of benefit for her to do so. And so too, Israel is also strategically of benefit to the USA. Scott Goldfinger, a correspondent to Quora, he pointed out so that for approximately half of what President Trump wants to build a border wall fence with Mexico, $3 billion each year, The United States gets the highest tech, best trained, loyal army, forward outposts, Air Force, Navy and intelligence service as an ally in keeping peace in the Middle East, with the USA's vital geopolitical and economic interests. Israel gives all this back to the USA. Israel is a valuable acquisition. It is worth having the friendship of Israel and having the support and the cooperation of the Jewish state, because the Jewish state is quite advanced in many ways in the economic sphere, in the intelligence sphere, in the science, in many ways. Israel helps the USA, or is of help to the USA. Sin pointed out that the USA wants a stable Middle East. It wants security for its economic resources, for the oil fields of Saudi Arabia and Iraq and of the Gulf states, and having a friend nearby in the form of Israel helps the US do this. Israeli intelligence is of value. Israeli intelligence, the Iranian nuclear program was held up because the Israelis managed to implant within the Iranian computer system programs that impeded the further development of nuclear weaponry in Iran for a while. And this was a benefit both to Israel itself and to other nations, to nations that Israel and the USA are concerned about. So this was an example of what Israel can do and has done, and why friendship and support of America for Israel is a benefit to everyone. It was also pointed out that American evangelicals, that is Christians, are a huge base of support for Israel. They believe and also read the Bible as saying that when the Jews come back to Israel, it was an auspicious moment, and that they are preparing the way for the future Messiah and for the Messianic era, and therefore they should be supported. And many Christians believe in this, and this is what the Bible says. And we will also talk of this later on. So this is also a factor. And Christians in the USA are an important element. They give a lot to the community. They give a lot to the US society. They are one of the things that keeps the USA in action, to sustains the whole country. And therefore their opinion is of value. We also need to take cognizance that sometimes the USA has been against Israel, that the close association of the USA with Israel has enabled the USA to put pressure on Israel in ways that have been detrimental to Israel. That is not all a one-way street, that Israel has suffered, one could say, as a lost advantages because of its close association with the USA. So this too needs to be taken into account. The Yom Kippur War of 1973, the USA saved Israel, or didn't enable Israel to save itself. It poured in tons of resupplies and weaponry to help Israel, but there was a delay. There was a delay in this supply, and according to accounts, Kissinger, who was actually Jewish, he advised the president to hold up the resupply in order to let Israel bleed a little bit, let her suffer, let her feel the need for the USA, and not to go around doing things on its own without consulting with the USA beforehand. So this both helped. Israel did receive the help it needed, but it received it at a time that was somewhat to its disadvantage, and it suffered to a degree because of it. This has to be recognized. Barack Hussein Obama was helpful to Israel. He continued the support of the USA to Israel, but on the diplomatic scene, he harmed her in certain ways. He was too supportive of the Arabs, and he also, in effect, helped Iran recover from the sanctions that had been placed upon her, and he helped Iran go ahead with this nuclear program. And now President Trump is attempting to reverse the damage that was done, but damage was done. That is one point. Israel, after the Yom Kippur War, had to retreat from the Sinai Peninsula, and the Sinai Peninsula was a very valuable area. It had important resources, oil Israel developed oil in the Sinai Peninsula for strategic reasons. The Sinai Peninsula is part of the promised land of Israel. Israel should have kept it. But because America, or not only because of America, also because of Israeli do-gooders and the liberals and people who wanted to make peace at any price, and also due to American pressure, Israel gave the Sinai back to Egypt and put itself in jeopardy because of that. So that is another point, that the USA helps Israel to a great degree, and sometimes it harms her. It harms her not necessarily by going against her, but by going together with weaker elements within Israeli society that are not necessarily for the good in the long term of the Israeli nation. Israel contributes to the science and the development capabilities. Israel is important in computer technology. Israel is important in medical breakthroughs, in water reclamation, in hydroponics, in communications, in numerous fields. Israeli scientists and Israeli developments help USA. Israeli use of American weaponry and American defense systems and improvements that Israel makes upon them help the USA and help upgrade US productions so that USA can not only enhance its own capabilities but also resell them to other countries. And using the fact that Israel uses American systems as state-of-the-art productions as a selling point. Jews have been important in the USA since its foundation. Jews were always there. Jews always helped. Jews were always gave a positive contribution to the USA culture and US society and US economy and everything about the USA, and that important thinkers within American history, including an ancestor of President Bush, wanted the foundation of the state of Israel to take place before it did. The part of the Restoration Movement was centered in Britain, but it was also America, where American thinkers and politicians were also an important part of it, and the Balfour Declaration probably would not have taken place without the affirmation and the agreement, positive agreement and input of the USA and of France. So these nations were also important in the Balfour Declaration that led to the British Mandate, that laid the foundations of the State of Israel. As we said, the Jewish people within the USA are important to America, and America wanted to help them because they are part of it, and helping them is helping themselves, and because of they are neighbours and brothers to them. And it was also pointed out that even though only a small percentage of the US Gentile population is of Jewish descent, there are a great many more than one would think. Someone said as much as 30% of Americans, which seems exaggerated, but that number has been suggested, that as many as 30% of Americans have some degree of Jewish ancestry in recent times. So this too is a factor that as to why Americans identify with the Jews of the State of Israel, because they too have common forebears. This is apart from the fact that many citizens of the USA are descended from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. Many of them are also, to some degree, descended from Jews. And the Jews and the 10 tribes are part of the 12 tribes of Israel. They're part of the whole body of Israel. In the end times, according to Ezekiel 37 and other passages in the Bible, they will reunite and come back together. And the action of the USA in helping the Jews in Israel is a preparation for this, as we shall explain. The God of Israel bless you. Thank you.